Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new video. Today I'm going to be going over 10 common mistakes that I see while flipping. Either I do them or I see other people do them pretty frequently. One of the best ways to learn anything is to learn from other people's mistakes, or even better, learn from your own mistakes. So I thought I would go over some common mistakes that people make while flipping because I really do think it is useful for learning. Now I do have 2 other videos like this, which I will leave a link in the description for, but if you think I missed any major mistakes that people make, they may be in those videos. So go check them out. Anyway guys, thanks for watching and let's get started. Now one trap that I fall into pretty frequently is just trying to find the item with the largest margin possible and not taking into account any other factors. For example, if you find an item that has a margin of 100k, however it's a very slow click scroll item and it's going to take like all day to flip 1 or 2 of them, you're probably better off going with an item that might be the same price but has a smaller margin, but a lot more people are going to want it. For example, if an item trades a few times an hour and it has a 50k margin, it's probably better than an item that trades once per day that has a 200k margin even. And that's not to mention that a lot of people will generally go for the highest margin item possible, and then there can be a lot of people competing over an item that really does not trade very much. Now one common mistake I see people making a lot is flipping high volume items when you really don't actually have that much money. Now don't get me wrong, doing high volume safe flips like OSRS scales, death runes, stuff like that is an excellent way to learn how to flip, but really not that efficient when you don't have that much money. For example, if you only have like 5 to 10 mil, doing a OSRS scale flip will take up like half your cash stack and will probably only net you like 30k. And you'll have to wait there at least like 20 or 30 minutes, which is really not that efficient. At those lower cash stacks, you're much better off doing high margin flips, PVM items, just generally items with larger margins. And once you get up to a higher cash stack like 40, 50 mil, then moving on to doing like high volume resource items, as you can fill up all your offer slots and you'll be able to be constantly doing stuff and making pretty consistent GP. But unfortunately, since a lot of people learn on those items, they feel a little bit uncomfortable moving on to higher margin, higher risk items, but you really need to do it or you're not really going to be making much money. I see a lot of complaints of people saying that you can't really make much money flipping, and I think that is a root of the problem. Coming at number 3 is not calculating your ROI on items. Now for those who don't know, ROI stands for return on your investment, and it can kind of be visualized as a percentage often. So for example, if you were buying an item for 12 GP and selling it for 24 GP, you were getting a 100% return on your investment, which would be extremely good. Now in a lot of cases, it's pretty easy to visualize which item has a better ROI, but once you get up to more expensive items, it can be important to actually see how much money you're getting back per your gold invested. For example, if you have 2 options here, investing 1,000,000 gold to get 10k back, or investing 200k to get a 5k margin back. Well, the first item actually has a larger margin to it, but you need to invest 5 times more money to get that margin, where if you actually just invested in the item that costs 200k, you'd be getting a 25k return as opposed to a 10k return. Now, of course, there are a ton of other factors like the volume of the item, but in general, going for items with higher ROIs will turn out to be more profitable. Now, one mistake that I make very frequently is investing too much money into one offer slot, considering what the item is. Now, I'm not really talking about investing like all of your money into one item by accident, but just kind of these smaller micro decisions. Like for example, sometimes I'll put like 10 mil into an offer when I know I'm never going to buy that many of that item, even in a full day. This is especially important when you're putting items in overnight or for longer term investments. You really want to make sure that you manage how much money is going into each offer slot. Other factors you want to take into account are buying limits. Often I will put in like 3 times the buying limit, check back in like an hour and be like, hey, why didn't they all come through? A very useful technique is doing multiples of the buying limit. It's the most efficient way to do it. For example, if the buying limit is 8 and you're going to be gone all day, there's no reason why you couldn't put in for 16 of the item. However, if the buying limit's like 4 and you put an offer in for like 20 of them, that's just a lot of wasted money you have there because there's no way you will buy all of those even in a full 24-hour time span. Now obviously diversifying your items is important, but this tip is more geared at just making sure you don't have wasted GP in the offer slots that you know is not going to come through. Either it can't because of buying limits, it can't because the item volume is way too low, or other factors. Next up here, coming at number 5 is spending too long trying to make a flip work, either trying to make it profitable or break even. You can spend a lot of time attempting to sell back an item for the price that you bought it for, but even if you do manage to sell the item back for a break-even price, that can sometimes take days. You may have to wait for the item to naturally increase in price again, and at that point you're just waiting and hoping. There's been a few times where I have waited like 2 or 3 days to attempt to sell back an item for the price I bought it for because I really didn't want to lose money, where you're much better off just cutting your losses and using that money to invest in a profitable item. Overall, you're going to be making more money. It's going to be more entertaining for yourself. You're not going to be constantly worrying about when that item is going to sell, if you're going to make money on it. And just in general, you're much better off having your money working than sitting around in dead investments. Now, number 6 is being afraid to take risks. And I'm pretty sure I maybe have put this on every single list I've ever made, but it is one of the most important mistakes that I see people make is playing it safe for way too long. The one thing that people don't seem to realize is that the Grand Exchange is way different than a traditional stock market. You can make money very consistently with almost no knowledge and no money on the Grand Exchange, where that is just not the case in real life. There are some similarities, but the Grand Exchange is extremely safe over the long term. Yes, you're going to be making some mistakes and losing some money, but after you have learned to flip, I think I make money on 80%, 90% of my flips, assuming you're not doing extremely high risk volatile items. Like brand new items or really expensive PVM items, stuff like that can be extremely risky. But for the everyday mercher or flipper, it is extremely safe, so you really should be taking risks to try to make more money, as more often than not, they can work out. Coming in at number 7 is not staying informed of the current meta trends, updates, or other impactful game changes. Now, this is especially important for people who are holding investments for quite a while or are flipping volatile items. You really want to be informed of game changes, especially because that can have a large impact on the prices of certain items, but also just different changes in the meta. For example, if there's a new method for the twisted bow or the dragon hunter crossbow, those items can spike up in price or decrease in certain circumstances. So just really trying to keep on the ball, informed on all the wheelings and dealings in old school RuneScape is extremely important. Coming up at number 8 is a mistake that I make all the time, and that is lowballing items too much. Now, knowing the exact margin at a given time is kind of only one data point you should be looking at. Generally, you want to look back as far as 24 hours or even the week to kind of see what the median low price is. I think that's a much more powerful way of putting in your offers, and this is especially important if you're doing it overnight, because if the item's at an all-time low for 1 hour and you put your offer in for that price, you may only get 1 or 2 items before the actual margin changes, where if you put an offer in for the median low price or the average kind of low price over the last 24 hours, 48 hours, something like that, you are much more likely to continuously be buying items, which I think is going to be a lot stronger. This is definitely important for high margin items or overnight flips or stuff like that, as generally you're going to make more money if you can get more quantity of a certain item, even if the margin is a little bit less. Coming up number 9 is waiting at the Grand Exchange for your items to come through. Now, if you're doing high volume flipping, you may end up doing this, but the beauty of flipping is you can do other things at the exact same time, and it is the most efficient way to do it. Even if you're doing fairly high volume flips, it's still probably worth putting in the offers, going and doing something, maybe checking back in 20 or 30 minutes. This would be the most efficient way to do it. Obviously, if you have a flipping alt or you don't really feel like doing anything, there's nothing wrong with staying at the Grand Exchange and just waiting for offers to come through. But this is one mistake I see people making a lot. I feel like it kind of affects your patience a bit. The longer you're kind of waiting there and staring at items, the more likely you are to make a hasty decision, change some offers up, or you'll end up cutting your margins, which I think having patience is important. So I think waiting at the Grand Exchange isn't generally a good idea unless you really don't have anything else to do. And lastly, we're coming at number 10 is not thinking outside of the box and kind of sticking to the same oversaturated PVM items that everyone else is doing. Now, especially when you're learning, sticking to oversaturated PVM items, high volume items is kind of a good idea. However, once you get a little more experienced, you're much better off trying to find unique items that no one has ever thought about. One really good one that I found a couple months ago was the giant seaweed. I actually had like a 100 GP margin on an item that was 400 GP, and I bought thousands of those, making millions of GP. Trying to think of obscure items that people are still actually using is a really important skill, and being able to lock down a really profitable flip and continually do it for days on end is probably one of the best feelings when you're flipping. Obviously, nothing lasts forever, but being able to find certain niches, certain items is really, really nice. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much it for the video. Before I let you go, I just wanted to talk about one last thing here, and it's something I'm really excited about. Yesterday, my friend and I actually built myself a new computer. My old one was, well, it was pretty dated. I think I had that thing for 8 years, and the fact that it actually took this long for me to upgrade after becoming a YouTuber is kind of insane. Now, the main reason I built the computer was for YouTube, so for editing. Well, playing RuneScape, I didn't really need much there, but what I ended up going with was a Ryzen build. I got the Ryzen 2700, 3.2 gigahertz, I think. I have 32 gigabytes of RAM, which In hindsight is probably still too much. I thought I was going to need more, but I'm hardly using more than 20 or 30% of it, but it'll probably be nice to have. I have a GTX 1060 graphics card, which is probably excessive, but I would like to play some more modern games occasionally too, and it's not a top of the line card, just a pretty decent one from a few years ago. Got a 1TB SSD and a 4TB optical drive, which I can now start filling up with videos, which will probably take a couple months probably. So this will affect the channel in a few ways. For one, I think I can now actually record at 60 FPS, which will be nice. I'll be able to render videos in half the time or a quarter of the time even. And just generally everything is going to be a lot smoother. And I am really excited. For anyone who's interested, the build cost probably about 1,200 Canadian. I already had the SSD, but I paid about $1,100 Canadian in new parts, which is like 900 US. So it's definitely not a top of the line computer, but I think it's a pretty good value to performance build. I had a lot of fun doing it. My very first time building the computer took about 2 hours. Anyway, guys, I just wanted to let you guys know. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.